It's been about 3 months since Sony's previous State of Play, which was actually a surprisingly strong showing. It kicked off boldly with the reveal of the long-awaited Resident Evil 4 remake, and a bonus look into Village VR for the PSVR 2, followed by gameplay for Stray and the Callisto Protocol, then a gameplay reveal of Street Fighter 6, and ended just as strongly with a fancy new trailer for Final Fantasy 16, along with a summer 2023 release window, which we continue to inch ever so closely towards. It was a short event, but left a strong impression among a group of other platform and publisher showcases, and furthermore, it set the standard for what we may expect in the inevitable follow-up event that everyone expected to be in September. But what we probably didn't expect was that the event was simply to be another 20-minute State of Play. For the last 2 years, Sony has been doing larger showcases in this particular month, and a lot of people assumed this year would be no different, including me. But, as we already witnessed, it was still possible for such a short show to be memorable and packed with awesome stuff. So did this new one live up to expectations? Let's get into it. And just for the record, I won't go into detail about every single game featured in the State of Play. I'll only cover what stood out to me the most. So, yet again, State of Play kicked off with a bold move. In-engine footage and a taste of gameplay for the highly anticipated Tekken 8, which was already teased during Finals Day at EVO 2022. Unfortunately, that tease was just a simple, smug grin from a very high-fidelity Kazuya. But now, we got a significant first look at what the Tekken 8 experience might be. The models of both Kazuya and Jin look absolutely incredible in what appears to be Unreal Engine 5. The stage is a stormy, rocky beach with tons of environmental effects. There's a lot of fancy transitions going on in this trailer, and I imagine most of it is just for show, aside from the slow-mo that Tekken 7 already has when both players are close to doing a trade. It was an explosive and hype reveal that a lot of people didn't expect to get so soon, and I definitely thought I would have to wait until the Game Awards to see anything substantial, but here we are. Of course, there's still a lot of questions that continue to go unanswered, including the years-old curiosity of whether this game will have proper rollback netcode in spite of Harada's continued hatred towards the subject. I know, I'm tired of talking about rollback too, but if we want all the big names to implement it in their games, we gotta keep pushing. Not just for that, but for crossplay as well. Both of these things are incredibly important for a fighting game's online longevity. If Dragon Ball FighterZ was able to get a rollback update a whopping 5 years after release, then anything is possible, especially considering it's another Bandai Namco published game. Either way, the footage we got of Tekken 8 here and now looked absolutely incredible, and it does reignite my love for the series, even though my opinion of Harada has only gone down in the last 4 years. Another piece of interesting info that came out after was that Tekken 8 has nothing but new assets, meaning nothing from 7 was reused. No wonder this game is taking so long to come out. After a couple of PSVR 2 games were shown off, we head into a title by Sega, a remake of a game that had never left Japan before, as the narrator called it. And I instantly knew what it was. There was only one game big enough and begged for enough by Western fans in Sega's recent releases where that detail actually matters to the significance of the game's release. Ryuga Gotoku Ishin, or Like a Dragon Ishin. It finally happened. After nearly a decade of constant begging and hoping, Ishin finally comes west. The Like a Dragon spin-off game set in 1800s Japan, starring alter egos of many popular main series characters, is getting its localization. And it's not just a translation or port, it's a full-on remake. Seriously, RGG Studio isn't just giving us a bare-bones release, which many fans would have been content with. They're giving us a remake so it better lives up to the standards set by Like a Dragon entries of recent years, while also providing interesting changes, such as the cast, which now features faces from other games in the series that released after the original Ishin. Furthermore, it's apparently being developed on Unreal Engine 4, which sounds odd initially, but considering how easy it is to just pick up the engine and use it, I think it makes sense to choose it for projects that won't see the budget or manpower of totally brand new entries of the main series. A day or so later, it was confirmed that the success of Ghost of Tsushima is what gave RGG Studio the confidence to finally localize Ishin. Part of me is very understanding of this because we've already gone through what would happen if Yakuza failed in the West. Years of campaigning to get the next one localized. But another part of me is kind of annoyed because fans have done nothing but boost the series' popularity since the Western release of Zero in 2017. The climate for Western Yakuza fans is not the same now as it was in 2012, and it's frustrating Sega needed the reassurance of another game's success as opposed to the passion of their growing fanbase. But whatever, a win is a win, and I'll be getting Ishin regardless. Next up is Synduality, a third-person mecha action game published by Bandai Namco. Not too many details are given either in the trailer or the PlayStation blog post associated with it, as it goes over mostly the setting 200 years into the future, and characters, but we can definitely parse an emphasis on exploration and resource collection from the footage we were given. Combat looks very fast-paced and particle effects heavy, which I rarely complain about. And the blog does indeed mention PvPvE gameplay because you may come across hostile players playing their own game at the same time and trying to complete their own mission. It also confirms customization of the mech, which is called a cradle coffin. The game still doesn't have a release date or even a window yet, but I'm always down for a good mecha game. Then we have the return of Project Eve, now called Stellar Blade, a character action game by Korean developer Shift Up, which looks like the love child of Bayonetta and Nier Automata in terms of combat and having a very attractive female lead. The sci-fi setting of a last remaining city on Earth taken over by horrific creatures looks impressively detailed. The game was initially announced in 2019 for PS4, Xbox One, and PC, but it seems Sony picked the game themselves for publishing, so now the game will only be releasing on PS5, at least at the moment. I can imagine that Sony saw big potential in the project and sought to scoop it up for themselves to bolster third-party exclusives. And I can't say that I blame them if any of the gameplay is indicative of the final product. It looks fantastic. Combat was shown off to a large degree and it's just as fast as flashy as it needs to be to really draw people's eyes. Stellar Blade is coming sometime in 2023, which is just shaping up to be more and more of a crazily stacked year. Then we have a very promising surprise from Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja. It wasn't Wo Long, as that has already been substantially covered since its reveal, and it wasn't the game being made in partnership with EA because that one's being developed by Omega Force. This game started off looking pretty familiar, particularly with its mid-1800s setting. But as the trailer went on, it was clear it was a more grounded historical fiction than Nioh's full-on fantasy setting. Rise of the Ronin is an open-world action RPG that seems to seek to combine the authentic historical atmosphere of Ghost of Tsushima and Team Ninja's flashy combat. We see brief glimpses of the main character riding a horse through a gorgeous landscape, and deploy a big, primitive wingsuit after jumping from a tower. It seems real-life historical figures will also be making an appearance, namely by Matthew C. Perry, a Commodore of the United States Navy who helped open Japan up to the West. The game looks extremely promising, but the 2024 release year puts a bit of a damper on things as it seems so far away. After the trailer, I couldn't help but think of the recently announced Assassin's Creed Codename Red, which is the long-awaited AAA Assassin's Creed entry set in Japan. Ubisoft announced that game during Ubisoft Forward only a few days before this state of play, and people have been deriding it since because Ghost of Tsushima already seized that opportunity with great finesse. And now, with Rise of the Ronin, and possibly even Ghost of Tsushima 2 to compete with, Ubisoft has seriously struck the Nippon iron while it was freezing cold, and now they have to compete with the standards set by potentially superior games, when they had years to set it themselves. And now they might end up at the bottom of this totem pole because of it. Embarrassing. Regardless, Rise of the Ronin looks extremely cool, and I will be keeping my eye on it. Finally, we have God of War Ragnarok. Well, it started with a new DualSense featuring a new God of War design. I do like the colors, admittedly. But after that, the actual new footage began. New glimpses of Tyr, cool combat moments that put the scale of enemies into an incredible perspective, including a lot of Blades of Chaos usage, brief bits of story and character interactions, and a ton of jaw-dropping, fantastical shots of beautiful moments and settings, like Skull chasing the sun away from the eclipse. That tiny scene is going to stay in its own special place in my head for a long time. It's a great visual. Then the trailer ends with Kratos and Thor clashing weapons. The word epic is pretty used and abused, but it's quite possibly the one word that best describes everything shown off here. I don't think I can say anything that hasn't already been said about this extremely well-edited and well-paced trailer. And that pretty much ends the state of play. It was a great showing, at least close to how good the previous one was. It started off super strong with Tekken 8, had some promising new reveals and updates, then ended strongly with a reminder of why God of War Ragnarok is so anticipated. I would have liked an hour-long showcase like I originally expected Sony to give us, of course. I have no doubt in my mind they have another solid dozen or so games to reveal or update us on, but they've been pretty conservative with announcements the last couple of years, and sometimes it is a little aggravating because we know they're working on so much more, but hopefully they have a long-term plan and will give us a true feast in the near future. Overall, this state of play was very good, short, sweet, and to the point. Only about 12 hours after that though, we had a show about one of my favorite IPs, held by one of my current favorite developers, the RGG Summit from Ryuga Gotoku Studio, makers of the Yakuza, or should I say, Like a Dragon, franchise. For someone who is as big of a fan of the series as I am, this event could be just as good as State of Play, and man oh man, did this one not disappoint. Like a Dragon fans are eating very, very well. First thing shown off was more footage of Ishin, with a strong highlight on the cast member changes featuring the faces and voices of characters from Yakuza 0, 6, and 7. Not much else to say about it that I haven't already stated earlier, but that February release date can't come soon enough. I am ecstatic that the wait is finally over. Next up is a teaser for RGG Studios' next big release, Like a Dragon 8. Not too much is shown off here except for a couple of small but potentially significant details. First, the fact that it seems we're back in Kamurocho, as the trailer takes place beneath the big, fancy lit-up torii gate on Tenkaichi Street. Second, Ichiban is seen walking forward accompanied by Kiryu, who is sporting a very interesting new hairstyle, which isn't explained yet. But I bet the reason for it will be something stupid but funny like Ichiban's fucked up perm in the last game. Apparently, Like a Dragon 8 is going to be the biggest game in the series thus far, and I can definitely believe that if the game focuses equally on both Kiryu and Ichiban in equal measure, and features fully realized Kamurocho and Isazaki Ijincho maps. RGG staff has confirmed that the game will still be turn-based and that Kiryu will have his own party, which leads me to believe the vastness of the game will be like two medium to large-sized Like a Dragon games put together to create a massive one, similar to Yakuza 0. I've seen a lot of people express reluctance about Kiryu's returning at all, because his whole arc is supposedly concluded after the end of 6, and the series' protagonist torch was passed in 7 to Ichiban. But honestly, I think 6's ending kinda sucks, and leaves a lot to be desired. It never felt like a true end to the journey of the franchise's most important character at all, especially considering how the development of 6 was crippled due to how many resources was being hogged by the creation of the Dragon Engine. The game didn't even have a complete Kamurocho map. The Champion District and entire northern side of the city was blocked off and inaccessible. As much as I still like it for the most part, 6 did not feel like a totally complete game. So I'm eager to see Kiryu return to truly fill in the gaps of his story. Another thing people seemed concerned about is Kiryu taking Ichiban's spotlight away, but I'm not really worried about that for two reasons. One, it's a turn-based game, which is definitely symbolic of this being primarily an Ichiban game. And two, Kiryu already shared a 50-50 split with another character in the aforementioned Yakuza 0, and while Majima wasn't new then, he still walked out of that game with the most character development. Either way, I'm really excited, and the wait for 2024 cannot speed up fast enough. However, speaking of both Kiryu and release dates, RGG Summit ended with one last game. Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. Long title aside, RGG Studio confirmed this to be the game that ties Kiryu's story together, covering events between the ending of 6 through 7 and to the beginning of 8. They also stated that this would be a smaller game compared to mainline titles, but equally important and featuring the same density of content. Sort of like Uncharted: The Lost Legacy or Spider-Man Miles Morales. Considering the aim of this game is to follow Kiryu so closely, I imagine that this is a game that definitely anticipates the player to have beaten all other games in Kiryu's saga. Maybe you can still play and finish it without having done that and still feel some sort of impact, but I think this is the type of game that'll have big moments where having that previous knowledge and first-hand experience will elevate the emotional heft. I'm considering making a video on how to start playing the Yakuza games because it's actually a much more nuanced topic than just saying, go ahead and start with 0. I'm not sure if I'll do that yet, but we'll see. Like a Dragon Gaiden will be out sometime in 2023, presumably after the Ishin remake, meaning that we'll be making up for the lack of Like a Dragon titles this year by getting 2 of them next year, and that sounds great to me. This pretty much concludes everything I have to say about State of Play and the RGG Summit. It was a great 1-2 punch of shows, and I'm glad to be a fan of Ryuga Gotoku Studio. I sincerely believe they're one of the most reliable and competent developers out there today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.